When I was first considering buying the Baltic Hermetique Tourer watch, I really wanted to know how it wore on my wrist. Because my wrist is 7.25 inches and this is a 37mm sports watch. Like you, I watch a lot of review videos from our same favorite YouTubers, but the problem with the Baltic Hermetique is when it came out initially, Baltic obviously sent it to many reviewers for review. And no, I was not one of them. So when these reviewers made and released the videos as soon as they could, it was nice to see the watch on screen, but I knew they hadn't spent an ample amount of time with this watch, which I really wanted to understand how it wore on a wrist of my size. So in this review, I'm going to focus on the watch, point out some of the unique features and small details, but also I wanted to share with you how it wears on the wrist for somebody of my size and compare it to a very famous Seiko watch that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Spoiler alert, I've been pleasantly surprised with the Baltic Hermetique, so let's take a closer look. For context, I'm about 6 foot tall, I've got a 7¼ inch wrist, and typically I wear 40 to 42mm dive watches. But I wanted a sports watch that I could wear with a polo and jeans, or even dress it up with a button-down shirt and a sports coat. But nowadays, so many watch brands are making watches so small, there's a point where I feel like I'm wearing a woman's watch, and frankly, I'm not good with that. Fortunately, for me, this Hermetique really hit the sweet spot, but I felt like it was taking a risk. I was taking a risk, not knowing how it wore. Like I said in the intro, I've been pleasantly surprised with this watch and how it wears on my wrist. But before I get into that, let's take a closer look at the watch itself, and let me point out a few details that really are great and some that aren't so great. So as most of you know, you've probably seen reviews on this watch, but let me express how amazingly thin this watch is, even with this beautiful domed sapphire crystal. If you take away the crystal, the thickness of the watch is just over 8mm. Including the crystal, the watch is just under 11mm thin. At 37mm in diameter with a crown that is unexposed and it's set inside the case, you can only imagine how comfortable this watch is. And when other reviewers tell you it is comfortable, they aren't lying. The lug-to-lug distance is about 46mm, which manages to give this watch a little bit more wrist presence, which is important for those of us with wrist sizes over 7 inches. Taking a closer look at the case, you'll notice that you have drilled lug holes, which is nice since this watch typically ships on a rubber Tropic strap. The bezel is a step-up bezel, but it's polished, which it does mix in well with the entire brushed case. It gives it a classier sports watch feel, but almost classy enough to be a dress watch in its own right. Taking a look at the dial, there are so many neat little details. For one, the railroad track printed on the outer perimeter of the dial makes this watch extremely easy to read and set the time. What you also notice is around and underneath the indices is this polished stainless steel ring, which is a beautiful detail you're not going to see on other dials that I've seen at this price point. Speaking of unique details at this price point, I'm sure you've noticed the raised lume block indices, the circular blocks at the cardinal positions, and the raised 12, 3, 6, and 9 markers. I've heard other YouTubers complain about the lume dying off quickly, which they are correct, but since I get up early enough every single day to darkness before the sun even comes up, when I look into my watch box in the early morning hours, this watch actually stands out almost as much as my Marathon G-SAR with tritium lume. So it may fade out fairly quickly, but the lume does last all night in my experience, which was a surprise to me based on the review videos that I've seen in the past. You may also notice about the dial is it's a very dark blue, and in most lighting situations, indoors and out, it looks black. You have to be in a certain light or maybe in direct sunlight to realize that this is actually a deep, dark navy blue. So when you look at Baltic's website, for those of you that only love black dial watches and realize that there's only green, tan, blue, and this reddish brown dialed options, don't worry. The blue dial could be a great option for you. As you can see in my example, the blue dial pretty much looks black most of the time. For me, that's a plus because I tend to gravitate towards black, gray, or white dial watches. The syringe style hands, I have to admit, and the sweeping lollipop second hand provide extreme legibility also, in my opinion. If you look at the case back, it's very basic with just some typical information like the watch model, movement, stainless steel, assembled in France, and the water resistance. I'm assuming that the case back not being see-through has assisted with the 150 meters of water resistance. Hermetique also means airtight or into which air cannot pass, which is appropriate for this 150 meter water resistant sport watch. I'm sure what assists in this is the crown that neatly fits into the side of the case. It's not a screw down crown, but I'm assuming the washers inside of the crown when depressed make this watch pretty much water resistant. Personally, I still feel that I wouldn't want to go swimming with it, but I know other YouTubers said that they had. I'll take their word for it, I guess. But like I said before, this definitely aids in the wearability of the watch. It also gives the watch nice symmetry when you're looking straight at it. However, this does pose an issue for setting time on the watch, at least in the example that I have. I've seen other reviewers that have examples that are easier to use as far as the crown goes, but in the watch that I have in my hand, it is a little bit more tricky to pull out the crown, set the time. I actually have to fit the crown underneath my fingernails and adjust the time by pulling out slightly on the crown and turning it. If I simply try to spin the crown, it just presses back into the case immediately. Like I said, it's a little tricky and it can be some little frustrating to setting the time. And if you want to wind the crown to increase the power reserve, well, you can forget about that. But the Miyota 9039 works a lot like the Seiko movements. And just a quick flip of the wrist and wearing the watch all day will build up the power reserve nicely in my experience. Just give it the old Seiko shuffle, as many watch enthusiasts know very well. Now I want to turn your attention to the bracelet. I 100% think that this particular bracelet is a perfect pairing for this watch. This is called the flat link bracelet, and in my opinion, it matches up so well with the aesthetics of the Hermetique. Sporty and classy all at the same time. Dresses up the watch enough to be extremely versatile in most every situation. And talk about the wearing experience of this bracelet. Just the way it lays across your wrist is super elegant and beautiful. The taper from 20 millimeter to 16 millimeter just exudes quality. Yeah, the polished outer links and the brushed center links could allow for some fingerprints and smudging and some swirling over time, but it's so beautiful. I couldn't imagine wearing this watch without this pairing bracelet, in my opinion. You may notice that there are only 2 adjustment holes on the clasp, but the links are so small that you can pretty much get a perfect fit between removing the links and making a small adjustment on the bracelet clasp. So now that I've gone through the details of the watch, let's talk about how it wears. I've now had many months of experience with this watch. I've worn it to different occasions, like out to dinner with a sport coat, to a wedding, and anywhere I would need a dress watch, the Baltic Hermetique has perfectly fit that role. I also find out that because it's so easy to wear, I tend to wear the watch for several days after the weekend's over while working because it's just easy and it's comfortable and you forget it's even on your wrist. But if you want a comparison on how the watch feels on the wrist, the best comparison I can make for you is that if you're familiar with the old school Seiko 5 SNXS lines of watches, if you look at the 2 watches side by side, they look almost identical in size. And they have that same dramatic taper that you get with the SNXS bracelet. The Baltic will give you that same wearing magic that so many people love with the Seiko SNXS. The difference is that the Baltic watch feels many levels superior in build quality. The Seiko SNXS is an entry-level Seiko 5 $100 watch, and it feels like it. Even though many feel that this watch is magical to wear, and I do feel the same way, hence why I have this Seiko. It's been in my collection for years upon years. but the Baltic will give you that same feeling from a wearability standpoint, in my opinion. So bottom line, if you're a fan of the old school Seiko SNXS line or old Seiko 5s, then you're really going to enjoy wearing the Baltic Hermetique. This watch is available on the Baltic website. It's about $600 at the time of filming. The bracelet costs another $120 or so, and it is sold separately. Personally, I do think it's fairly priced. And from what I can tell, the last year of this watch that it's been in production, most of the watch community must feel the same. You can find pre-owned watches on eBay pretty easily, but they're priced pretty high. And on the watch forums, you very rarely see these up for sale, which tells me the watch community is pretty smitten with the Hermetique. And I must admit, I have been too. I hope this video has given you some information about how this little watch wears and how it feels to wear. This is my very first experience with Baltic watches, and I will say I'm impressed, especially with the build quality and the uniqueness of the watch. What's also pretty cool, and this is from what I understand, the different bracelets that are available on the website fit most of, if not all the cases, of other Baltic watches. That's great if you own different models. Now jump down in the comments below and let me know if I'm correct with that statement, and if you know for sure, because I don't. Being able to use this bracelet for the Aquascoff or the Bicompax chronograph, that would be really cool if that's what you can do. You're not going to get that from most other brands, that's for sure. Well, if you made it this far, let me introduce myself. My name's Blake. I'm a bit of a watchaholic, and if you made it this far, I'm assuming you're a watchaholic too. So make sure you like the video, subscribe because I have a lot of great reviews coming up, and thank you for spending your time with me. I'll see you guys in the next video.